October 1992. Daryl walked slowly through a rough part of town on the south side of Chicago, lost in his thoughts. He didn't notice a group of poorly dressed teens watching him from an alley. "Look who it is!" one of them shouted, breaking his concentration. "It's the kid who thinks he's all that. Maybe you should know better than to be out here alone." Daryl felt his heart race as he glanced around, trying to stay calm. "Hey, Ty," he replied, hoping his voice sounded steady. "I'm just on my way home." "Home!" sneered the bigger boy. "That's where you belong! Back with your mother!" The others laughed, making Daryl even more anxious. "I don't want any trouble," he said, trying to sound brave, even though he felt scared inside. "Of course you don't," Ty mocked, "since your friend isn't here to help you now." He turned to the group with a smirk. "This guy gets scared when things get tough, like at school. I got in trouble because of you, you know?" Daryl raised his hands. "I didn't do anything, Ty. She caught you cheating. Why are you blaming me?" "You wouldn't have told if it weren't for you," Ty shot back. "I wouldn't have to cheat if you didn't mess things up. This is all your fault, and you need to know your place. You think all that studying makes you special?" "No!" the smaller boy said, fear creeping in. He could sense that Ty was dangerous and needed to find a way out. Ty had been getting meaner toward him since their first year in high school. "I'm sorry you got in trouble, but it wasn't my fault." Ty was not listening. His jealousy and anger made him more aggressive. One of the other boys moved towards Daryl, distracting him, and Ty stepped in and hit him hard in the side of the head. Daryl stumbled back, pain shooting through him. "This isn't fair," he thought, feeling a rush of anger. For almost a year he had been picked on, and in a sudden moment he swung back, catching Ty on the jaw. Silence filled the alley as Ty fell back, landing heavily. Daryl quickly looked around, seeing surprise and judgment on the faces of the group. Embarrassed, he glanced down at his own hand, shocked that he had done something so unexpected. By the time he looked back at his opponent, a light glinted off something in Ty's hand. Before he could understand what he saw, a loud noise broke the quiet night. Everything felt like it stopped as he wondered why the other boys were stepping back. "They can't be scared of me," he thought anxiously. He wanted to say something to make things better when he felt something wet on his shirt. Looking down, he was shocked to see a stain on his best shirt. "What will Mom say?" he panicked. He tried to cover the stain, but it seemed to get bigger. It felt warm, but he was getting colder. He barely noticed the sound of footsteps running away as he fell to his knees, pressing his hands to his chest, hoping to stop the bleeding. "Where are you?" he breathed. "I need you." His last thought before he leaned forward was how worried his mom would be if he didn't come home soon. The pain faded as the darkness closed in, and the sound of sirens grew distant. At that same moment, about 30 miles away, a 13-year-old boy named Tim Sullivan sat alone in his room in a nice neighborhood in the Northwest. He could never have guessed how that random act of violence against a boy he didn't know would change his life. October 1999. Tim was a typical quiet sophomore in college. He was studying engineering, hoping to work in technology designing and fixing electronic devices. His friend Pete worked at a very successful telecommunications company and promised Tim a job once he graduated. They met during Tim's junior year of high school at a job fair, and Pete quickly took Tim under his wing. Part of it was likely out of kindness. Tim was the classic definition of a nerd. He was skinny, looked average, felt awkward in social settings, and wore clothes that were far from trendy. Pete saw him and chose to be Tim's mentor. They talked for hours about school, interests, and what Tim needed to do to get a good job. For the next year and a half, Pete called him every month and gave Tim his email in case he wanted to chat. Pete was a successful and cool guy who helped Tim find new ways to improve himself. By the time Tim finished high school, he had become somewhat popular and even dated a few girls he never thought would be interested in him. He was still inexperienced, but he thought college might be the right time for new experiences. Tim was fortunate to be accepted into his first choice, the state university known for having one of the best engineering programs in the country. Pete continued to be a great example for Tim, which Tim found very helpful when he realized that college would be more challenging than he had imagined. It wasn't the fun party scene he had expected. The girls at school were attractive, but they mostly paid attention to the popular guys and athletes. Many of the students came from rich backgrounds, making Tim feel a bit out of place. It reminded him of his high school days before his changes. Instead of worrying about dating, which didn't seem likely, he decided to follow Pete's advice and focus on his studies. This approach worked well for him, and he kept a 4.0 average during his first year despite a tough class schedule. During summer break, Pete helped him get a temporary job. This was perfect for Tim, allowing him to save money for his second year, which he hoped would bring good changes in his life. When Tim returned to school, he noticed that working with professionals had boosted his confidence. Friends and classmates quickly picked up on this change, even if he didn't realize it himself. Within a week of classes starting, he went on his first date of the new semester. Tim began to enjoy the social side of college along with his studies. He went to parties and dated often, though none of those relationships became serious. Around midterms, several big gatherings took place to help everyone unwind. A guy he was tutoring in algebra invited him to one of these parties, promising lots of attractive women and saying he would take care of Tim. Tim agreed to go but reassured his friend that he was fine on his own. The truth was, he had never told anyone he was still a virgin, and he didn't want to be embarrassed by being set up with someone more experienced. Though he wanted to take that step, he felt like waiting for the right moment, and he often thought about whether that was out of hope or fear. The party was wild. As he walked in, the loud music hit him, and people were shouting just to be heard over it. The crowd was a mix of familiar groups from campus. Tim wandered through the house looking for his friend, which was difficult given how many people were there. He turned toward the kitchen, searching for someone he recognized, hoping not to feel out of place. Just then, he spotted her. She had long brown hair, brown eyes, and smooth skin. Her legs seemed to go on forever, and her smile had the cutest dimples. She looked like a model. Tim felt lost before he even took another step. Usually he would be too shy to approach her, too nervous to make any impression. But this time was different. He was so busy looking at her that he walked straight into a wall and knocked himself out. When he came to, everything was blurry. He realized he was in a bathroom, lying in a tub with a towel on his face. When he pulled it away, he was shocked to see it covered in blood. "Don't touch that," a gentle voice said. "You'll get blood on your clothes. I was worried you might need to go to the hospital. I've never seen anyone bleed like that before. You're lucky I'm training to be a nurse." As Tim's vision cleared, he felt a pounding headache. He tried to sit up, but the room started to spin. "Hold on," the voice said. "You should stay still until you're feeling better." He felt a hand gently guide him back down. When he looked up, he was embarrassed to see it was the woman he had been staring at. "Oh no," he said quietly. "What?" she asked, sounding concerned. Nothing," he stammered, wishing he could disappear into the wall. He peeked over the towel and saw her smiling warmly at him. "Did you just realize it was me you were staring at before you bumped into the wall?" Tim thought about leaving the room in embarrassment, but remembered Pete's advice to stop being afraid. What could go wrong now? "Well, I must admit it wasn't my best moment," he said, trying to sound casual. "But I wasn't paying attention. I didn't think angels were real, and suddenly they are." This made her laugh. "I'll give you credit for courage. Most guys wouldn't say something like that after what just happened." "I'm Donna," she said, stretching out her hand. "Donna, I'm Tim. Sorry if I don't stand up. If I try to get up, I might fall again, and I don't want you to call for help." She laughed again, and he took the chance to look at her more closely. She was really beautiful. Her big brown eyes were friendly, and her lips had a slight smile that made her look like she was always up to something fun. Her hair fell gently past her shoulders, framing her face in a simple, carefree way that showed she didn't spend hours getting ready. She looked friendly, kind, and comfortable, as if she didn't need attention from others to feel good about herself. Tim's confidence quickly vanished when he realized he couldn't offer her anything special. He wondered what it was like for her to have so many guys trying to get her attention. The thought made him feel small. He withdrew into his own shell, thinking, how could I possibly impress her? Especially after everything that happened. Then a thought hit him that was almost as uncomfortable as knowing she had helped him when he needed it. "So, how many people know what happened downstairs?" he asked. not really wanting to hear the answer. Donna looked amused, and that made him uneasy. Well, let me see. There's me, the 2 guys who helped carry you upstairs, the 40 people in the room, the rest of the house who came running, and by tomorrow the whole campus will see the pictures they took. Tim groaned at the idea. Thanks for that. Now I feel so much better. Did you learn those comforting skills in class, or are they just a natural talent? Relax, she said with a playful sparkle in her eyes. If you can laugh about it, it will blow over in a week or 2. If not, you might see those pictures on the bulletin board all the way until Christmas. Grasping at the only chance he had, Tim said, I don't suppose you'd think about hanging out with me for a while. Just for moral support, of course, he added quickly, not wanting to seem too needy. She smiled warmly. I suppose it's the least I can do since it's my fault you ended up in this situation. Your fault? Well, she said with a teasing smile, if I didn't look so nice tonight, you would have been just fine. He chuckled, but quickly regretted it due to the pain. Please don't make me laugh. They spent the rest of the evening together, with Donna staying by his side to help him feel better. Taking her advice, Tim laughed at himself and noticed that most people warmed up to him, even the athletes. When he told them why he bumped into the wall, a few girls even called it sweet. As the party came to an end, Donna told him she needed to get back to her room to study. She gave him a quick hug. This was really fun. Would you like to do it again sometime? Tim replied right away. Are you free in an hour? After that, they started spending a lot of time together, but just as friends. They did simple things like have lunch or study at the library. Sometimes she would ask him to go with her to parties when she didn't have anyone else to bring. Tim was surprised to find out that her life was not as perfect as he thought. When she was alone, there were always guys trying to impress her with their lines. It was not what he expected. In fact, it felt a bit sad. Few people seemed to care about Donna or what she truly wanted. Instead, it was just a long line of guys looking to impress her. Even having Tim nearby didn't stop many of them from trying. More than once, a guy would step in between them to talk to her, thinking his charm would make her forget Tim. Donna always responded the same way. She would politely tell the guy she wasn't interested, walk around him, and continue her conversation with Tim as if nothing had happened. Tim found it funny to see the shocked looks on the faces of those guys when they realized she preferred his company. Just after Christmas break, Tim noticed a change in her behavior. Donna began asking him to go out with her more and stopped making excuses. It was a small change, and it took him a while to really see it, but he eventually felt sure that something was different. On Valentine's Day, there was a party hosted by her sorority where the girls got to pick their dates. Tim had heard about it and wondered who Donna would choose. He had developed strong feelings for her, and even though she seemed interested lately, she had not given him any clear signs that she felt the same way. He tried not to get his hopes up, but secretly wished she would choose him. The rules for choosing dates were a bit unusual. Girls could not ask their dates until 2 weeks before the dance. This was meant to create some excitement about who would be chosen. The day the girls could finally ask, Tim tried to stay positive, but deep down, he was preparing for the chance that he might end up alone that night. Around 10 in the morning, he heard a soft knock at his door. When he opened it, he saw Donna, fidgeting and looking more nervous than usual. This surprised him because Donna usually seemed confident and in control, likely from all the attention she received from guys. It made her seem out of reach since most men rarely saw her being herself. Tim had many thoughts racing through his mind as he watched her stand there looking a bit nervous. He already guessed why she was there, and he had to hide his trembling hands. "Hi, Tim." She looked at the floor, took a breath, and said, "I wanted to ask if you'd like to go to the Valentine's dance." He didn't think twice. "Of course, I'd love to be your date, Donna," he said, a big smile on his face. He checked his watch and added, "I was just wondering what took you so long." With the tension eased, she playfully stuck her tongue out and they both laughed. Tim felt so relaxed that he leaned in and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek and hugged her. He noticed her tense up, so he pulled back to see if he had done something wrong. She was looking at him differently, almost as if she expected something. Her gaze was captivating. Tim felt warm and leaned in again, this time more slowly. It was as if he was being drawn to her, unable to resist. When their lips touched, it sent a thrill through her. He noticed her lips were soft, and the scent of her perfume overwhelmed him. She leaned closer, and their lips met again. Tim tilted his head, feeling the moment build between them. As she moved closer, he felt overwhelmed again, causing him to stumble back against the door. This broke the moment, and she pulled back slightly, looking a bit shy. "Wow," he managed to say. "Yeah, that was surprising," she replied. "I've been wondering if you would ever make a move." Tim looked at her, confused. "Make a move? You've been saying we're just friends. Every time we go out, it's because you don't have a date." She smiled, almost teasing. "Don't you get it, Tim? Sometimes you just need to be brave, just like that." He shook his head, trying to understand. "All this time, I thought listening to you and respecting your wishes was what mattered. You were waiting for me to take a chance all along?" "Well, not exactly," she said. "If you had tried when we first met, it might have felt different, but things changed as I got to know you. I thought I was being obvious enough about how I felt." Tim raised his hands in surrender. "Okay, I give up. I completely missed the signs. Next time, just send me a signal, okay?" Donna shook her head with a small smile. "Guys can be so clueless sometimes," she muttered. She had to rush off to class, so they shared a quick kiss before she jogged down the hallway. Tim closed the door behind her, feeling overwhelmed with excitement. Donna glanced back and smiled as a few people poked their heads out to see what was going on. For Tim, the following week felt like a dream. They spent as much time together as they could, growing closer and enjoying each other's company. The fact that she now wanted to be with him as more than just a friend opened up a part of his heart he had kept guarded for so long. In the past, it had been hard for Tim to act like it didn't matter when she dated other people, even though he deeply valued their friendship. Now knowing she wanted him, that weight was finally lifted. Since they already knew each other so well, their relationship progressed naturally. They became more comfortable with each other, sharing moments of closeness that went beyond simple affection. The night before the dance, things escalated as they explored their connection in new ways, both of them enjoying the deepening bond. As they kissed, Tim tried to sense what made Donna happiest. He wanted to make sure she felt special and cared for. His focus was entirely on making their time together meaningful, paying attention to her reactions to guide him. They both got lost in the moment, with Donna responding warmly to his gentle touch. In these quiet moments, Tim felt amazed that he could share something so intimate with the person he had long cared for. They embraced their growing relationship, enjoying each other's company in a way that felt natural and right. "Please don't stop," she said, her voice urgent. Tim continued, focusing on her reactions as she moved with him. She got louder, and to keep things private, he leaned in and kissed her, hoping to muffle the sound. Her body tensed for a moment before relaxing, and she arched upward, her movements intense. He could feel her muscles tightening as she let out another sound that filled the room despite his efforts to keep things quiet. Gradually, her body began to relax, though small twitches showed she was still feeling the after effects. Tim thought it might be the right time to take things further and reached to help her out of her jeans. "No, Tim, not tonight," she said softly, pulling away. Her hands quickly stopped him, and he looked at her, puzzled by the sudden shift. "But I thought—" She stood and pulled him close, whispering, "Soon, I promise. Just wait a little longer." Tim's disappointed expression almost made her laugh, but she held back, not wanting him to think she was making fun of him. Donna gave him a playful smile. "I promise to make it up to you," she said quietly. They shared a tender moment as they held each other close. Tim could sense the affection between them, and although things didn't go as he expected, he understood that patience was important. The warmth and connection they shared were enough to make him smile, and they both knew their bond was growing stronger. Instead, he gently touched her cheek and gave her a comforting look. She moved closer, and they shared a quiet kiss. Tim couldn't find the right words, so he simply wrapped his arms around her and softly said, "Thank you." She gave him a playful smile. "So, am I forgiven?" With a tired grin, he replied, "I suppose I can let it go this time." The next night, they had a wonderful time at the dance. They laughed and joked with her friends, who all quickly accepted Tim as her boyfriend. He wasn't a great dancer, but he didn't want her to miss out, so he joined her on the dance floor whenever she wanted. He especially enjoyed the slow dances, which were easier for him, and he liked seeing the friendly smiles from the people around them. After the dance, Tim took her out for ice cream. He was a bit worried that it might seem too old-fashioned, but since they weren't old enough to go to a bar, he didn't want the night to end just yet. To his relief, they had a lot of fun. They talked and laughed until the ice cream shop closed and they had to leave. Donna had a way of making everything enjoyable, and her cheerful attitude gave Tim a big boost of confidence. Afterward, they walked around the campus, holding hands and gazing at the moon. It felt like a dream come true for Tim, the kind of date he had always hoped for. Knowing that she enjoyed it just as much made it even more special, though it became a little awkward when he ran out of ideas for what to do next. "Are you ready to head home?" he asked, a little disappointed. "Well, what are my options?" she teased. Tim took the hint. "My roommate's away for the weekend, so we could go to my room," he suggested. She smiled and kissed him, agreeing with the idea. Tim felt hopeful that they had moved past the hesitation she had before. He was excited, but also nervous, not wanting to mess things up. They reached his room and went inside quietly. Donna leaned in and kissed him again, more intensely this time. "Go sit on the bed and get comfortable," she said with a playful grin. He watched her as she casually removed her sweater, making him smile at how relaxed and confident she seemed. They both laughed softly as they settled in, enjoying each other's company, letting the night unfold naturally and peacefully. Tim watched as Donna spun playfully, showing off her graceful moves with a light-hearted energy. She flashed a smile and asked, "What do you think?" Tim smiled back, feeling a warm connection between them. Donna stepped closer, gently guiding his hands to hold her. He softly kissed her shoulder, feeling the closeness they shared. She laughed softly when he surprised her with a move she hadn't expected, and Tim couldn't help but think of his friend's advice that had worked out perfectly. With care and tenderness, they continued to enjoy their moment together, sharing smiles and laughter, feeling more comfortable with each other. Donna gently pulled away for a moment, teasing him with a playful look, reminding him who was in charge of their fun. They exchanged light touches, their focus shifting between playful moments and quiet smiles. Donna took a step back, keeping the mood light and fun, and made sure Tim knew she was in control this time. With a gentle push, she guided him to lie down, keeping the atmosphere easy and enjoyable. Tim responded with a chuckle, going along with the mood. They shared a series of soft and caring moments, each enjoying the connection they had without needing to say much. Donna continued to playfully lead the way, making it clear that tonight was all about enjoying each other's company in a relaxed and comfortable way. Their time together was filled with warmth and laughter, making the night special in its own unique way, with no rush and no pressure, just the two of them enjoying the quiet and simple joy of being together. Tim felt overwhelmed by the moment, his emotions swirling as Donna pulled him closer. He tried to speak, but she gently hushed him, her smile warm and comforting. "It's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to worry. Just be here with me." They shared a deep kiss, full of tenderness. Tim's heart pounded as he lost himself in the warmth of her embrace, feeling safe and loved. He ran his hands along her arms, feeling the softness of her skin, and kissed her gently, wanting to express how much she meant to him. Donna gazed at him lovingly, her eyes filled with care. "I love you," she whispered. Tim's chest tightened with emotion, and without hesitation he responded, "I love you too, Donna." The words came easily, filled with sincerity. They continued holding each other close, finding comfort in the shared, quiet moments, their connection deepening as they simply enjoyed being together. The warmth of the room, the quiet of the night, and the soft rhythm of their breathing surrounded them, creating a peaceful space where words were no longer needed. Tim kissed her again, his affection clear in every gesture. The night passed gently, filled with kindness, love, and the sense of being completely understood and accepted. Tim gently ran his hand over her skin, savoring the warmth and softness. He traced her form slowly, enjoying the closeness they shared. She moved a little, adjusting herself to be more comfortable. He could feel the connection between them growing stronger with every moment. As she shifted, he continued his gentle movements, holding her close. They shared quiet moments of affection, both enjoying the simple act of being together. Tim felt a deep sense of contentment as they lay there, entwined in each other's presence. He kissed her softly, expressing his care without words. The intimacy between them deepened as they exchanged small, meaningful touches. They were lost in the moment, focused only on each other. She responded with warmth, pulling him closer as they shared in the quiet connection. Tim felt a surge of emotion, knowing that their bond was more than just physical. It was the trust and affection that made this moment special. They moved together, gradually finding a comfortable rhythm that felt natural and easy. Neither rushed, and they allowed the tenderness between them to grow. Eventually, she shifted slightly, taking the lead, and Tim smiled at her initiative. They continued to enjoy their time together, fully immersed in the closeness they shared. The room was quiet except for the sound of their breaths, and the sense of peace between them was unmistakable. As they rested afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Tim couldn't help but feel grateful for the connection they had. It was a moment he knew he would remember for a long time, simple, pure, and filled with warmth. She looked into his eyes and whispered, "I love you." Sitting up, she shifted gently in his lap, moving back and forth. The feelings grew, but he kept himself steady. He held her close, gently touching her. Suddenly, she stopped moving and held his hands against her. "Don't move," she said softly. Then, as if thinking aloud, she added, "Right there." She began to sway her hips a bit, adding a gentle twist. "Yes," she exclaimed, moving her hips in a quick circular motion. He could feel her body shiver, and she tensed up as she experienced a strong moment of joy. Her movements were rhythmic, and he noticed her hands shake with the sensation. She rested on his chest, kissing him sweetly. "That was wonderful. Now I want to feel even closer." Seeing his look of concern, she assured him, "It's okay. I'm careful." This was a request he was happy to fulfill. He gently laid her down, wrapping his arm under her leg to support her. He moved with energy, wanting to share the moment fully. "Yes, just like that," she encouraged him, her touch light on his back. Her words and the connection they shared filled him with excitement. "I'm getting there," he said with a deep breath. She held him tightly, and in a final rush, he felt a wave of happiness. He embraced her fully, feeling their closeness wrap around them like a warm blanket. They kissed deeply as they shared this moment, leaving him feeling complete and fulfilled. "I love you," she said again, looking into his eyes. "I love you too, Donna," he replied softly. The rest of the school year passed quickly. Even though he tried hard, Tim's grades dropped a bit because of all the time they spent together. Donna made it her mission to help him, picking out clothes, introducing him to important people at school, and showing him how to get along with different groups. She had a way of fitting in with everyone. Whether it was a big party or a calm get-together discussing current events, Donna always knew what to say and who to speak with. When summer break came, he felt sad to leave. She was staying at college to work and take a couple of classes, while Tim had to return home and work with Pete again. He planned to visit her a few times, and she would come see him once too, but after spending so much time together, the weeks apart felt long. Tim decided to make good use of his time, so he went back to work with Pete and studied hard to improve his grades. He knew that when school started again, he had to be ready to make the most of it for both himself and their future together. Pete took a few days off for Tim's trips to see Donna, and again when she visited for her 21st birthday. He insisted on taking them both out for a special dinner, and they had a lovely time enjoying each other's company. After the celebration, Donna returned to Tim's house where his parents kindly let her stay over. They tried to be quiet and spent time together for hours. It was a memorable night, filled with warmth and affection that Tim would always treasure. When Donna left for school, Tim returned to work for the last 3 weeks before classes resumed. Although they didn't communicate as much during the break, Tim found comfort in how special their time together had been. He knew that soon he would get back on track with his work and studies, and their relationship would flow like it did during the previous school year. He shared his feelings with Pete, saying he was deeply in love and wanted to propose to her when the time felt right. Pete cautioned him that he might be moving too fast. Tim agreed and thought about waiting until Christmas, but he couldn't resist visiting a jewelry store where he spent a good part of his summer earnings on a beautiful ring. The salesperson assured him that Donna would be amazed when he asked her. He was certain that when she saw how he was planning for their future, she would say yes. Tim arrived at school on a Tuesday and went straight to his dorm to freshen up. When he opened the door, he was surprised to find Donna waiting on his roommate's bed, dressed beautifully. Just then, a voice behind him exclaimed, "Wow!" and startled Tim from his shock. Laughing, he stepped inside and closed the door. "Wow, you look amazing," he said, feeling a mix of surprise and excitement. "How did you know we would have the place to ourselves?" "I made some plans with your roommate. He's out for the evening, so we have all day together," she said confidently, making it clear she had everything arranged. They spent the afternoon catching up on the time they had missed. It turned out to be a wonderful day and a perfect way to kick off the new school year. Things went well over the next month. Donna was really attentive, but they still faced some challenges in managing their time together. Tim was pleasantly surprised by how well they connected, even though other aspects of their lives felt a bit tense. He thought it was normal for a serious relationship, especially during the busy time of college life. The close part of their relationship was going well, and he believed the rest would sort itself out when they had more time together. She understood he was working hard for their future, and she supported him completely. Tim was excited about the last week of September because he had plans with Donna. There were several parties to celebrate the football team, which was ranked nationally for the first time in years. He didn't usually attend those events, but since Donna knew many people on campus, they were invited to 3 different parties. She wasn't sure if they should go to all 3 or just choose one, but she promised that any of them would be a lot of fun. The party would be the highlight of the week, but what mattered most were the activities leading up to it, which he hoped would give them more time together. Unfortunately, the week did not go as planned. Tim had 2 teachers who were not fans of football, which meant he had a lot of homework and important quizzes to focus on. In the small amount of free time he found, he kept missing Donna, who was busy planning one of the parties. They would leave messages for each other, but it was frustrating. Every day, he looked at the ring hidden in his sock drawer and reminded himself that things would work out eventually. To make things worse, he had to cancel his plans for the party because he needed to finish a paper by Monday. He thought it would be better to spend Sunday with her doing something nice instead of being at a loud party with unfamiliar faces. On Friday, they missed each other again, but he left her a message encouraging her to enjoy time with her friends. When he returned from the library on Saturday, he noticed the message light was blinking. He walked over to the machine and pressed play. "Tim, it's me." Donna's voice sounded worried, making him concerned. He recognized her different moods, and something felt off. "I know we've both been really busy lately, but we need to talk. I'm calling you tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Please try to be there. It's important." Thoughts raced through his mind, each more troubling than the last. He glanced at his unfinished homework and decided it could wait until the next day. It was already 9 o'clock, so he knew it might be hard to find her, but Tim was determined to check on her. He first stopped at the party where most of her sorority friends were. It didn't take long to find out she wasn't there. The girls seemed to be enjoying themselves, and since no one mentioned Donna being upset, Tim felt a bit better. He wondered if he had overreacted due to the stress he had been feeling. He decided to check out the jock party next. Many guys from the football team were going to be there. Though Tim didn't know most of them, he had been to enough parties to recognize some faces. When he arrived at the door, he quickly regretted not going to the third party. He only saw a few familiar faces, but he didn't know them by name. He asked around a bit, but didn't get much help. One of the football players overheard him asking about Donna and coolly informed him that she was upstairs. Ignoring the player's condescending look, Tim headed up the stairs. The house was large, and it took him a while to move through the crowded rooms. After another 10 minutes, he still hadn't found her, and started to doubt if she was even at the party. There had to be more than one Donna there anyway. Before giving up, he decided to ask a girl he vaguely recognized. She was a freshman and seemed quite intoxicated. She had noticeable marks on her neck, and her makeup was smudged. Tim guessed she was just getting another drink before heading back to whoever she was with. He gently caught her arm and asked, "Hey, do you know Donna?" After a quick nod, he followed up with, "Have you seen her here?" The girl looked confused for a moment before the haze cleared enough for her to understand. "Oh, I saw her a little while ago. I think she's in Jake's room. Hold on, I'll go check." She wobbled across the hall and knocked on a door before peeking inside to talk to someone. Suddenly, Tim felt uneasy. Did she mean Donna was just hanging out in someone's room? Or was it something else? He had never felt jealousy regarding Donna. She always made it clear she wasn't interested in anyone else, so he had never worried. He felt silly for thinking too much about it. Donna was the nicest, most loyal person he knew. The girl pulled back from the door and a guy opened it wide. Tim instantly recognized him as Jake Stillwell, the All-American linebacker from the team. They had crossed paths a couple of times, but never in school. It was well known that he received a lot of support to keep up with his classes. Jake was a solidly built guy, standing tall with a confident look that bothered Tim right away. "So, this is the boyfriend," Jake said with a smirk. "I don't think you're needed here. Donna is safe." "I think there's been a mix-up. We're talking about another girl," he said, hoping there was some confusion. Tim was trying to figure out the mistake when he heard a voice from behind. "Jake, have you seen my top?" He stepped back as Donna emerged from the bathroom wearing only his jersey. She paused when she saw him and tears appeared in her eyes. "Tim," she whispered, before she hurried back into the bathroom and shut the door. Tim turned and quickly headed for the stairs, eager to leave before he embarrassed himself further. How could I have been so naive? He thought, his vision blurred by tears. She would never be with someone like me. He left the house and slowed down, overwhelmed by his emotions, when someone called out from behind. "Hey, Tim!" He stopped and turned, his embarrassment not yet over. "Don't think too much about it," Jake said. "It's been a tough week for her, and she just wanted to clear the air." Although Tim felt threatened, he was too upset to worry. He confronted Jake. "Leave me alone," he said firmly. He saw a crowd gathering from the house, curious about the commotion. Tim stood his ground, waiting. "Let's not make a scene," Jake turned to the onlookers. "Wasn't it loud earlier?" Some from the crowd responded with a cheer. Hearing that, Tim confronted Jake, stepping up to him. Jake easily dodged his move and pushed Tim back, making him stumble. Tim looked up. Everything seemed to slow down. His hearing was muffled, and he felt disoriented. He realized someone was helping him up, and Jake stood there, ready to argue further. 4. He never saw the punch coming. Everything went dark for a moment, then he was surrounded by bright lights. Then Tim found himself on the ground, on his hands and knees, trying to figure out what had just happened. He looked up and saw Jake coming at him again. Suddenly, he felt a hard kick to his side, and he could hear a crack. As he lay there, he could hear people arguing. "Stop it, Jake. If you get in trouble with the police, you'll face serious consequences." Tim looked around in confusion and saw some of his teammates pulling Jake away, while he continued to shout threats that Tim couldn't quite catch. Unlike in the movies, he never lost consciousness. All he felt was a painful throb, leaving him wishing for some relief. A couple of guys helped him up and led him back toward the dorm. "You better not pick on him again. He could really hurt you," one warned. "Forget about your girlfriend. If she's with him, you're better off without her." The words didn't make sense to Tim, but they kept swirling in his mind as he tried to figure everything out. His head was pounding, and the pain in his side was intense, making it hard to breathe. He must have told them where his room was, even though he couldn't remember. One of them took his keys and opened the door for him. They helped him into the room and laid him on the bed, then left quickly, telling him not to call for help. Tim lay there in the dark for what felt like forever, unable to move. The pain was increasing, and he didn't know what to do. Finally, he fished his phone out of his pocket and slowly hit speed dial, holding it to his ear. There was some noise, then a tired voice answered. "Yeah? Pete?" he said weakly. The voice suddenly sounded worried. "Tim, are you okay?" "No, I need help. Please." Then, thankfully, the pain began to fade. Tim stirred when he heard knocking on his door, but he couldn't force himself to get up to answer it. The door handle turned, and he tensed, worried it might be Jake again. He felt relieved when Pete walked in. "What happened? Are you okay?" he asked, a look of concern on his face. Tim shook his head, still finding it hard to breathe. Pete took a quick look at him and insisted that he needed to go to the hospital. He helped Tim up and supported him as they made their way downstairs. Pete's car was parked right outside, and once they got in, he drove to the nearest hospital just a mile away. The doctors took x-rays and examined him thoroughly. They told Tim he would be fine but needed a lot of rest and some medication to help with the pain. He needed to be checked for a concussion, which Pete promised to do, and the doctor advised him to visit his regular doctor in a week. The doctor wrote a prescription and told Pete to take him home. "Do you want us to call the police?" the doctor asked. Tim could still hear what the guys who drove him home had said. "No," he replied quietly, feeling defeated. He ignored Pete's angry look. "I just want to go home." Once they were in the car, Pete tried to control his earlier anger. "Are you ready to talk about what happened?" Tim shook his head, too embarrassed to say anything. "Do you want to go back to the dorm?" "No, I'm done. There's nothing for me there. Can you take me home?" Tim felt bad for asking so much of his friend, but he couldn't stay there any longer. A couple of hours later, they arrived at Tim's house. Pete had called his parents from his phone, so they were waiting at the door. They were too worried about him to ask many questions. Tim kept his answers vague, thankful to postpone the details. They thanked Pete sincerely for looking after their son. Tim expressed his gratitude. Pete simply said to take time to heal and to reach out when Tim was ready to pick up his things. He mentioned he would call some friends at the school to see if he could help. With some luck, Tim's academic path would remain mostly unchanged. After Pete left, Tim accepted another concerned hug from his parents, then slowly went upstairs hoping for some sleep to escape the turmoil in his mind. A week later, Tim decided it was time to get his belongings from school. He thought about Pete's offer for help, but decided he could manage on his own. Even though Jake had tried to provoke him at the party, Tim figured if he had just walked away, nothing else would have happened. He wanted to go to the dorm in the morning so he could pack up while most students were in class. He wasn't sure if anyone knew or cared about what had happened, but he didn't want to find out. Tim's parents had hired a lawyer who planned to contact the university as soon as he got home. They had a hospital report and photos, which the lawyer believed would help him get his tuition refunded. The school certainly wouldn't want any trouble, especially with their star football player involved. The team was working hard for a major bowl opportunity, and the last thing they needed was scandal. Since Tim's car was still at school, he had to take the train. He had a chance to think about everything that could go wrong, especially the possibility of running into Donna. He knew she had called his phone many times because he checked the messages at his parents' house. Tim remembered one time she called the house directly. He wasn't there, but his mom mentioned they spoke briefly. There was a look in her eyes, and Tim guessed it must have been an intense talk. He didn't know what they discussed, but she never called the house again. While at home, he talked briefly with his roommate Andy, letting him know he would be back soon and asking if anyone had come by. Donna had been there a few times, but no one else had visited. The train arrived at the station, leaving Tim with a 5-minute walk to campus. It was cold enough that he had to wear a hooded jacket, which made him feel less noticeable. He wasn't too worried about issues. It was more about the embarrassment of having feelings for someone who could have embarrassed him publicly. His tough experience just added to the memory. Tim promised himself that once he left this place behind, he wouldn't think about it again. He reached the dorm without drawing attention. Sneaking up to his room, he looked down the hallway, then quietly entered. When the door closed, he glanced at the bed and remembered his first day back when Donna surprised him. He recalled every detail of that day, the way she looked, the scent, how she had eagerly been with him. Stop it, he told himself. It would be difficult enough without thinking about her. Packing everything took about an hour, and he began moving it to the car. Tim was excited to leave as soon as possible. He would spend just over 3 months doing part-time work with Pete, then would go to his mentor's school, which is where Pete had wanted him to go in the first place. He reminded himself never to doubt his friend's advice again. He returned to the room for the last trip. Taking a final look around, he thought about how much his life had changed in just 1 week. He checked the last suitcase and noticed the ring he had bought for Donna. It was lucky that it hadn't been taken. It had remained in a drawer all week, not even locked away. He remembered how happy he'd been to buy it, and all the plans they had made for their future together. "I'm such a fool," he told himself with a sigh. He closed the box and put it back in the suitcase before heading out. Just as he reached the front door of the building, he spotted a familiar face walking by. He was almost out the door when Donna's friend Cindy called out, "Tim, is that you?" With a frustrated sigh, he turned away, trying not to look her in the eye. "Hi, Cindy, what are you up to?" She walked over slowly and pushed back her hood. "Oh my gosh, what happened?" She seemed genuinely worried. "It's nothing, I'm fine. How are you?" he replied, wanting to keep it short. "I'm all right," she said, still looking concerned. "I'm really sorry about what happened with you and Donna. You know we all care about you, right?" "That's nice to hear. I really like you and the other girls, too. You've always been nice to me, and I appreciate it. Please say hi for me," he said, glancing around, eager to leave. "I'm sorry, but I really need to go." She paused, unsure what to say. "Have you seen her? She's been trying to reach out to you to explain things. I know she feels really bad about what happened, and she cares about you." Tim let out a sarcastic laugh. "Yeah, she looked so worried that she forgot to dress properly." Cindy flinched at his words, and he felt bad for being harsh. He reminded himself that she might not know everything. I shouldn't take this out on her. "Sorry, I just don't feel like thinking about her right now." Cindy nodded, understanding. "You're right to feel upset. I want you to know that we all like you. You're welcome with us any time." Her words surprised him, but they didn't help his mood. "Sorry, but that's not going to happen. I need to leave now." She looked taken aback. "You mean you're leaving school? I don't understand." "It's fine. I'm all packed and ready to go. I don't want to be rude, but I really need to get out of here. Just one favor, please don't tell her you saw me. You don't want to be caught in the middle, and I really don't want to talk to her." "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Leaving school is a huge step. I hope it's not just because of her." "Don't worry, it's about more than just her," he said, checking his watch. "I'm sorry, but it's getting late. I need to go. Thank you for what you said. It means a lot." He leaned in to give her a friendly kiss on the cheek, but she hugged him instead. He tried to hide the pain he felt. At least she didn't seem to know about the argument, which was a relief. The fewer people who know, the better, he thought. They said their goodbyes, and he left before anything else could happen. Tim tossed his suitcase into the front seat and drove away. Just as he was about to turn onto the road that led out, he saw something he had been dreading since he decided to collect his things. Donna was 50 yards away, walking alone on the grass. Even though he felt terrible inside, he paused to watch her for a moment, noticing every detail one last time. She had her head down and seemed lost in her thoughts. Tim allowed himself to think about how much he cared for her and how much he would miss her. Then he wondered how he could have misjudged her. He took a moment to look at her, making a promise to himself that his life would be so amazing that he wouldn't really miss her. Turning back to the road, he left the parking lot without looking back. Despite what you might believe, the title of the story is not about Tim's relationship with Donna or any other woman. This is a long story full of surprises. Hopefully, it will keep you guessing until the end. I enjoy those kinds of stories, and I did my best to capture that feeling. October 2004. "Ugh!" Tim said in frustration, banging his hands on the steering wheel. He glanced at his watch and realized he wouldn't make it in time. His fingers tapped impatiently as he waited for the light to change. "Why does this happen to me every day?" he thought angrily. "Whose bright idea was it to put the meeting here?" he grumbled. The light finally turned green, and his tires squealed as he took a sharp turn into the parking lot, immediately searching for an empty spot. The only one available was far from the entrance, so he parked quickly and started running, hoping to make it before 8. Tim rushed into the lobby, breathing hard, and waved to Tammy at the front desk. "They're already in the meeting, Tim. You'd better hurry," she called out, a hint of amusement in her voice. He hurried past, glancing back to see her laughing at his situation. Tim reached the conference room just as Pete began his presentation. "Oh no," he whispered to himself, trying to open the door quietly so he wouldn't be noticed. "Of course he notices when I mess up," Tim thought sadly as he reached for the handle. "This shows the problem we're having with the rail voltage on the new model. Pete said just as Tim slipped into a chair, ignoring the smirks from the others at the table. Without looking at him, Pete said, "Maybe Mr. Sullivan can explain why this issue hasn't been resolved yet, since he so kindly decided to join us this morning." Great, Tim thought. How does he always do that? "Well," Tim said, trying to catch his breath, "I looked over the specs yesterday and saw that we were having trouble with the output from the power supply. We can fix this if we..." He presented the ideas he had gathered over a weekend spent studying every type of power supply the company had made in the last 3 years, hoping to make up for his awkward start to the day. Some of the other engineers shook their heads in disbelief, unable to understand why the young man would spend his weekend looking over specifications and plans. As Tim opened the folder to take out the papers he had prepared at home, he tried not to think about how they were right. When the meeting ended, he approached Pete, feeling uncertain and hoping he wasn't upset. Even though Pete liked Tim, his tardiness could reflect poorly on Pete's leadership, and he didn't want to make his best friend look bad. "Sorry, I was up late working on this and overslept." Pete looked him over and shook his head. "You look terrible. You could have finished this today. Did you even shower this morning?" "It was important to have it ready for the meeting," Tim replied firmly. "And yes, I did shower this morning." With a small grin, he added, "If you want to know, I even used my new cologne. Want to smell it?" Pete threw his head back and laughed loudly, drawing a curious look from his secretary. "Rhonda, can you please make sure this guy gets the rest of his work to my desk?" As Tim turned to leave, Pete added, "And please find him a comb." She tousled Tim's hair playfully, telling him not to mind Pete's teasing. He handed her his completed work and returned to his office to finish up what he could before lunch. Pete planned to take him out to get more details about his weekend. Tim tried to focus on his work. Everything else was just as chaotic as ever. "So, how was Maria?" Pete asked bluntly as they waited for the waitress. Tim shrugged slightly. "She was nice." "Nice?" he exclaimed, sounding surprised. "She looks like a model, has a great job, and is really smart. Trisha said she would be perfect for you." "Nice is all I get? My wife is going to be very upset with you Wednesday night." "Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that," he mumbled, unable to meet his friend's gaze. "There was nothing wrong with her. We just didn't connect. She was way beyond my reach anyway." Pete looked at him like he was about to say something he wouldn't want to hear, but just then the waitress returned. They ordered lunch, and Pete quickly made it clear he wasn't ready to let the topic go. "Tim, this has to change. You work all the time, and you never have any fun. You put all your money into that big house, but you don't do anything with it. It's bigger than mine, and it's just you living there. You don't even seem interested in finding someone to share it with." "I don't understand what you're doing with your life." Tim felt hurt by what Pete said. He didn't want to hear it. "What I do is my choice," he replied sharply. "I love my house. It shows." He paused, unsure if he wanted to share more. "I'm happy with my life. If you don't like how I live, maybe you should stop trying to set me up." Pete leaned back, looking hurt. As soon as Tim saw his face, he regretted his words. "I'm sorry, Pete. That was out of line. Please tell Trisha I'm sorry about the date. I appreciate you thinking of me, but Maria just wasn't a good match." "Well, it seems like none of them are," Pete said with a sigh. He quickly changed the subject. "Okay, let's talk about your idea for the new line." They spent the next hour discussing Tim's idea and how to make it work without disrupting production. The new line had the potential to earn the company a lot of money, and it would help Pete get another promotion. That was great, as he always made sure Tim was well taken care of. After helping Tim through a tough time, Pete had used his connections to get him into college. Tim had to take on more classes and do some summer courses, but he managed to graduate on time. As promised, he left school and landed a good job with Pete's company. It turned out to be a beneficial arrangement because Tim quickly moved up to a supervisory role. Pete was excellent at managing projects and always paired Tim with teams working on important tasks with the latest technology. This made Tim essential to the company, someone everyone relied on in critical situations. Working long hours and bringing projects home wasn't easy, but within 3 years, Tim became the youngest engineer to lead a major project for the company. Tim thought to himself that Pete was right about his ambition. He knew he was pushing himself hard, but how many 25-year-olds owned their own home and car, especially when he achieved it all through his own efforts? Tim didn't like to think about it, but his friend was also likely right about his struggles in love. He felt something was off, but nothing he tried seemed to help. In the end, it didn't matter. Work made him happy, it made sense, and it was getting his life to where he wanted it to be, and for now, that was enough. Still, knowing Pete's wife and the trouble she would cause him, he wasn't looking forward to their weekly dinner. Wednesday night finally came, but Tim was running a bit late from work. He had just enough time to change and tidy up before heading to Pete and Trisha's. Just as he grabbed his coat, the doorbell rang. "She's going to be mad at me," he muttered, rolling his eyes at the interruption. He rushed to the door, expecting a salesperson. But when he opened it, he was shocked. The color seemed to drain from his face as he dropped his coat. Standing in front of him was someone he never thought he would see again. "Donna," he managed to say, feeling like something strange was happening. "Hi, Tim." It took him a moment to gather his thoughts, as if he had just been hit unexpectedly. Everything felt slow and out of focus. "What are you doing here?" he asked, still surprised. She appeared nervous and a bit cautious. "I was hoping we could talk." In a daze, he stepped back and invited her in. She walked into the living room, looking around with interest. Tim bent down to pick up his coat, trying to handle the mix of emotions swirling in him. He couldn't help but notice how beautiful she still was, almost like a vision from a dream. He walked behind her, hoping she wouldn't see how unsteady he felt. "Your house is lovely," she said, genuinely impressed. "Thank you," he replied, still trying to think clearly. Suddenly, an idea struck him. "I was just about to meet some friends. I need to let them know I'll be a bit late." She nodded, but her face showed she was disappointed he meant to leave soon. He turned and went into the kitchen to make a call. "Hello, Tim. Why are you going to be late this time?" Trisha said playfully. "I need to talk to Pete now," he said seriously, ignoring her teasing. Something in his voice must have made her realize he was serious because she quickly called for her husband. "He'll be here soon. Is everything okay?" she asked, worry creeping into her tone. As he tried to explain, Pete grabbed the phone and asked what was wrong. "Donna's here," was all Tim could think to say. There was a pause on the other end. "Hey, are you there?" Tim asked, feeling frustrated. "What should I do?" After a moment, Pete asked, "Did she say why she's here?" "I didn't think to ask," he replied, trying to keep his sarcasm in check. "I haven't seen her in 5 years, and now she just shows up. I'm really confused. I need some time to think. Just be honest with her. You have to go to your boss's house, and you can't be late. She showed up out of nowhere. You don't have to make excuses." Trisha added, "Make sure to ask her what she wants. If you don't, you'll keep wondering why she's here." "Okay, I'll be about 15 minutes late. I'll tell you both what happened when I arrive. Thanks." Tim hung up and took a deep breath, feeling a bit more calm. Pete was right. There was no need to come up with a fancy excuse for not wanting to talk to her. She had come uninvited. It wasn't his job to make things easy for the woman who had caused him trouble and then showed up without notice. He walked into the living room, ready to hear what Donna had to say. "Do you have a little time?" she asked nervously. "I have a few minutes. I need to meet my boss and his wife soon. I already called them, but I don't want to be late." Tim thought for a moment about how to ask why she was here without making it seem like he cared. After a short silence, she said, "Since I only have a little time, I don't want to waste it. I'm in town for a week or two and wanted to take you out for dinner. I thought it would be nice to catch up on what's been happening in our lives." Tim couldn't hide his annoyance at that idea. "Sure. I want to hear about your happy life with Jake," he thought bitterly. His frustration must have shown on his face because she looked away. "I know this is unusual," she said, sounding a bit uncertain. "There are things I wanted to say a long time ago but never had the chance." She paused and then looked at him with determination. "I know you weren't expecting me, but I've been wanting to be honest with you." He scoffed. "Honesty? That would be new for you." A hurt expression crossed her face, but she stood her ground. "You have every right to be upset with me, Tim. But I can't leave without giving you a chance to know what really happened. I gave up before, and it was a big mistake. I need to make sure I don't let that happen again." She turned to grab her purse, walked to the door, then paused and faced him with an apologetic look. "Tim, it's really nice to see you again. I'm glad you're doing well. I always believed you would." Tim hesitated for a moment, then decided that Trisha was right. He did want to find out why she was there and what she needed to say. Part of him wished she had never returned because just seeing her was causing him distress. Another part wanted to understand why she had hurt him, especially with someone like Jake. "I'll be busy tomorrow, but I should be free Friday night," he said calmly, trying to hide his feelings. "It might be nice to catch up." Her shoulders relaxed and she looked grateful. "Good. I'll call you Friday to find a time that works for you." They exchanged phone numbers and then Donna walked to the door. As she reached it, she turned. "Thank you, Tim. This means a lot to me." The stress on her face lifted and he saw the old Donna again, young and full of life. She stepped through the doorway and Tim watched her walk to her car, feeling lost once more. "But if she wants to talk, that could be good," Trisha insisted. "Maybe she wants to apologize." Pete looked at his wife with annoyance. "Who cares if she wants to apologize, after what she did?" His voice faded as Trisha shot him a serious look. "Tim," Trisha chose her words carefully, "for years, I've seen you going through life like you were only half there. It hurts because you're a good person. Marie said it looked like you were counting the minutes until your date ended." Tim flinched at the comment, which was close to the truth. You're stuck in the past. Whether it's because Donna hurt you deeply or for another reason, you need to find a way to move forward. Maybe understanding what really happened could help you find peace. Trisha looked at him with warmth that made him blush. "You should do what makes you happy. Pete and I will support you no matter what. But if you ask me, this is your chance to get the answers you didn't have before." Tim gave her a shy smile, feeling some relief. "Well, Pete always says you're right. Maybe I should listen." She smiled and gently kissed his cheek. "You're really a kind man." Tim called Donna when he got home. The conversation was a bit tense, but she seemed thankful to know he still wanted to meet. After hanging up, though, he couldn't shake the feeling that a simple talk couldn't erase what had happened. He struggled with this thought until he finally fell into a restless sleep. By the morning, he decided to show her that he wasn't the same person he used to be. On Friday night, he arrived at the restaurant right at 7. Donna was already seated at a table, trying to look calm. He greeted her warmly and glanced at the menu. They didn't speak much until the waitress took their order. After she walked away, Tim leaned back in his chair, trying to look confident. "Well?" As he watched her, Tim felt strong and sure of himself. He had a good job and a nice life. Even if she was still with Jake, Tim knew Jake wasn't doing as well, so he doubted she was either. When she first saw his house, her shocked face told him she might be a bit jealous, but her reaction surprised him. "Well, what?" she asked, looking puzzled. "I've been waiting for 2 days to find out why you showed up after 5 years. Are you here to say, sorry I messed things up for you?" She looked hurt for a moment, but quickly hid it. "No," she replied simply. Tim paused, thrown off by her unexpected answer. "Tim," she said softly, "what could I say that would change anything? Apologizing won't fix what happened. If I could go back and make things right, I would, but that's not possible." She cleared her throat, as if she had been preparing to say something important. "I want to tell you what really happened and why. You deserve to know, but only if you want to. I hoped we could talk like old friends just for tonight. It would mean a lot to me." Her eyes were earnest as she looked at him. "Later, if you want me to apologize, I will. I'd do anything to ease the hurt I caused you." She looked down. "I promise, saying I regret it is the easy part." Tim sat quietly thinking. What she said made sense, but part of him was still uneasy. Who is she to feel sorry for me? He thought angrily. "Fine," he said sharply. "If you want to talk, I have questions. You're here alone. Where's Jake?" "I left him a long time ago," she replied quickly, looking at her hands. "So he breaks up with you and now you want to see what I'm up to? Is that the reason you're here?" Donna raised her eyes to his. "Tim, I would never do that." Ignoring his skeptical look, she continued, "I left him a few months after it started. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I didn't come here to justify my choices." Tim shook his head. He suddenly realized dinner was a bad idea. This encounter was not what he expected, and it felt like she was trying to make him feel better. The only good part was that her relationship with Jake had ended, but even that didn't help, since it reminded him she had hurt him for a short-term fling, he thought bitterly. Tim felt his anger rising. There were many feelings he had kept inside for years, afraid to share them with anyone. He could feel his anger bubbling up, making him want to respond to the hurt he felt. "So let me understand this," he said. "You expect me to believe the woman who has been unfaithful to me for who knows how long?" She shook her head and looked around at the other tables. "It wasn't like that, Tim." She glanced at the people nearby. "This isn't the right place for this conversation. I wanted to talk afterward, somewhere private." "You mean I have to talk to you again?" He took a bit of satisfaction in seeing her hurt expression. "Fine. We won't discuss what happened with Jake. Let's change the subject. How many times were you unfaithful to me while we were together? I'm surprised at how well you convinced me you were a caring girlfriend. You really should have chosen a different career." "There was no one else," she said quietly. "Okay, I'll take your word for it, given your history of honesty. But when you decided to be with someone else, why didn't you just tell me? Why let me make a fool of myself?" he shot back. "Unless that was your plan, to make me think we had something special just to laugh with your new friends." "Jake had many qualities, but being better than you was not one of them," she said, her gaze dropping. "I meant to tell you when it happened, but you were always busy. Everything just went wrong." "So it's my fault you couldn't behave?" Tim asked bitterly. "No, it's not like that. I take responsibility," she said, looking deeply into his eyes. "I just didn't know how to discuss it with you. I felt terrible about what happened. Yeah, I really got that feeling when you walked out of his bathroom asking about your clothes. You sounded so unhappy." Tim usually kept his feelings to himself, not wanting to share what he truly thought. But since he didn't get the closure he wanted, he decided to unleash his anger on her. He let out 5 years' worth of doubt and frustration without caring how she felt. By the time their dinner arrived, Tim had spent his anger and just wanted to leave. He told the waitress to pack his food to go. She looked at him oddly, then headed to the kitchen. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. "Thanks for dinner, Donna. You were right. This was really helpful. I do feel a bit better." He noticed her struggling to hold it together and then turned to take his food from the waitress before leaving. Instead of going home, he drove to the store nearby to get some aspirin for the headache that was starting to build. The excitement from the recent confrontation was fading, leaving him tired and unsure about how he should feel. As he drove home, he noticed a park by the road. One lonely car sat under a streetlight, catching his eye. After a block, he realized it looked like Donna's car from Wednesday. "What's going on?" he thought, feeling uneasy in his stomach. He drove 2 more blocks, unable to shake the questions. Something stronger than anger was bothering him, and he couldn't figure out what it was. Eventually, it became too much, and he turned around to go back to the park. He parked nearby to take a better look. There was no doubt it was Donna's car, an old 4-door model with a dent in the driver's side. Tim parked a little distance away, trying to decide whether to check on her or not. "It's not my responsibility," he told himself repeatedly. Still, a strong urge pushed him to see if she was okay. No matter how angry he felt, he knew he needed to make sure she was all right. Finally, he stopped resisting and got out, walking slowly toward her car. As he got closer, the streetlight above turned on, lighting up the inside of her car. His unease became a painful knot in his stomach as he saw her arms crossed over the steering wheel, her head resting on them. She was crying, her body shaking with sobs. The feeling that had been troubling him became clear guilt. Tim realized that Donna probably expected him to be upset, especially after their rocky meeting on Wednesday. It dawned on him that she came anyway, giving him a chance to express his feelings. She hadn't tried to justify her actions or seek forgiveness. Instead, she held herself together until he left, then came to the park to be alone. Tim knew he had every right to be angry with her and even resent her for what happened. But seeing her in such distress affected him deeply. The feelings he had for her long ago returned, making him feel a heavy sadness for how he had acted. Carefully, he stepped forward and tapped on the window. When she didn't respond, he knocked a little harder. Donna jumped back, startled, then quickly turned her head away, hiding her face in her hands. "Please go away! I can't talk to you right now!" she said, her voice shaky with tears. Tim stood there for a moment, his heart racing. Suddenly, Tim didn't see the older, less confident Donna. He didn't see the woman who had hurt him. Instead, he saw the girl who had been his best friend in college, his first love, and part of many happy memories. His desire to win the argument vanished, and all he wanted was to find a way to fix his mistakes. Noticing that she had left the door unlocked, he reached for the handle and pulled it open. Donna turned and saw Tim coming in. She tried to move away across the seat. He gently placed a hand on her arm to show he truly cared. "Come here," he said softly. Carefully, she let him pull her closer, then let herself be guided out of the car. Without thinking, he wrapped both arms around her and held her tightly. At first, she seemed hesitant, but soon rested her head against his shoulder. Tim felt her body tremble as she let go of her emotions. She pressed against him, allowing the years of bottled-up feelings to flow out. Tim was surprised by the emotions he felt and found the embrace uncomfortable. His feelings were whirling inside him. Yet, he couldn't pull away. All he could think about was how fragile and lost she looked, and he felt responsible for that. "I'm so sorry for everything," she cried. "I just can't explain." Her words trailed off as she continued to cry against him. "It's okay. Just let it out," he said gently, wanting to make up for his earlier behavior. He spoke softly while stroking her hair and holding her close. She leaned into him, fitting against him just like he remembered from years ago. It felt natural to hold her again for the first time in a long while. "Don't do this," he thought wildly, trying to remind himself not to respond to her closeness. The person you remember is just a memory. You might not know her anymore. After a while, her sobs quieted and her breathing steadied. She pulled back and looked into his eyes. "Thank you," she said, wiping her face with her sleeve. She turned away to gather herself. "You didn't have to do that. I promised I wouldn't break down in front of you." "Why not?" he asked, confused. "Because it's not fair to you. I came to talk just to be honest about everything. I didn't want to make you feel sorry for me." Tim sat on the hood of her car and patted the space next to him. She joined him. "I'm sorry, Donna. I was not nice to you tonight. What you said surprised me. The truth is, I do think about what happened, but it's complicated for me. I was really angry with you for a long time. The truth is, I still am." "You have every right to feel that way," she said softly. "If things were different, I wouldn't know if I would want to talk to you again." Tim sighed. It was clear this was going to be complicated for both of them. "How about this? We forget about the restaurant. You can follow me to my house, we can heat up this nice dinner you brought, and catch up like old friends who haven't seen each other in a long time. No more talking about bad stuff. What do you think?" Donna looked surprised but thankful. "I think you are full of surprises. I would love the chance to spend some time catching up before." She took his hand and squeezed it gently. "I know this is hard for you. It is for me too. I want you to know how much I appreciate your kindness. I don't feel like I deserve it." Now, he replied gently. "We agreed. No more talk about tough things." She smiled, looking a bit shy, and then got back into her car. Tim jogged back to his car and drove out of the parking lot. As he turned onto the street, he felt a sense of relief. Unlike the confused happiness at the restaurant, this feeling was clear and genuine. Handling the situation this way made him feel strong and in control. He felt more in charge of his life than he could remember. Donna followed him home, where they enjoyed dinner together. They talked late into the night, sharing stories from their college days and laughing freely. Tim carefully guided the conversation away from sensitive topics, noticing her hesitance to lead. He felt a bit uneasy seeing how unsure she had become, but he knew they would address it later. When their conversation slowed down and he noticed her yawn, Tim decided it was time to wrap things up. "You look really tired, Donna. We don't have to rush everything. Why don't you get some rest?" "That might be a good idea," she agreed. "Could I have some coffee? I need a little boost before I drive home." He hesitated, unsure about her driving since she seemed fatigued. "Donna, the motel is over 30 minutes away. Why not stay here tonight? I have a nice guest room with a comfy bed, and you are welcome to use it. You can head back in the morning instead." She paused to think about it, considering the possible outcomes. "I don't know," she replied cautiously. Are you sure it wouldn't be any trouble? Not at all, he said, surprised by how eager his answer sounded. Come on, let me show you around. Tim walked her through the house, listening happily as she expressed how much she liked it. She was especially impressed by the in-ground pool in the addition. He showed her how to turn on the lights and made sure the curtains were closed in case she wanted to relax in the evening or morning. She seemed impressed, which filled him with pride about how far he had come since their last meeting. Here's something for you to wear to bed, he said, giving her a pair of shorts, an oversized t-shirt, and a robe. Oh, and my kitchen is a bit empty. If you wake up first and feel hungry, just wake me up and I'll take you out. Sorry if it's not much, he added, feeling a little embarrassed. That's perfect, Donna said, gratefully accepting his offer. I really appreciate all of this, she said, gesturing around the room. Whatever we do in the morning is fine by me. As she went upstairs, Tim felt mixed emotions. Part of him was happy to see her again, especially since he could show her what he had achieved. But his mind couldn't help wandering to darker thoughts. There were still many questions about her past and what she might reveal, yet he resolved to stay positive for now. He decided to worry about everything else later. Tim lay on his back, gazing at the most beautiful face he had ever seen. Donna was close to him, and the warmth between them felt overwhelming. He was enjoying this moment, feeling as though he was being tugged into a whirlwind of emotions. Suddenly, he was jolted awake. Donna, he murmured, sitting up suddenly. He looked around the room in confusion for a moment, before realizing he was having the same dream again. It was one that he kept to himself, knowing others wouldn't understand. He didn't want to hear anyone tell him to move on or something similar. His friend Pete was the worst about this. He held a strong dislike for Donna that seemed unusual for his generally cheerful nature. Tim understood why Pete felt that way. Pete was the one who had rushed him to the hospital at night. He stayed by Tim's side as he battled troubling thoughts about revenge or even worse. The whole situation with Jake had affected Tim more than he realized. Losing Donna in such a sudden and tragic way was hard enough. On top of that, he felt a lingering fear that Jake was triumphing over what happened. Until that moment in the parking lot, Tim thought Donna might have been laughing with Jake. Now, he was uncertain. Shaking his head, Tim tried to dismiss these worries. The dream left him feeling hot and disoriented. He needed a drink to relax, so he got out of bed and put on some sweats. When he opened the door, he noticed Donna was going down the stairs. He quickly stepped back inside to give himself a moment to calm down. That dream always left him feeling a bit flustered, and he didn't want to run into her just then. After taking a minute to regain his composure, he made his way to the kitchen. To his surprise, she wasn't there. He reached into the fridge for a drink when he heard a sound from the pool house. Curious, he walked over to the door, turned the handle, and opened it just a crack. The lights were low, but he could see Donna moving a chair closer to the edge of the pool. She had a drink in her hand and was wearing the robe he had lent her. He watched as she loosened the tie of her robe, letting it fall open slightly. She then took it off her shoulders and set it down on the chair. Tim wanted to respect her privacy, but he couldn't look away. It was the first time he had seen someone swimming freely, and it was the woman he had been thinking about just moments before. She turned to give him a clear view of herself. She looked as beautiful as he remembered from their college days. Her figure was just as he recalled, and his mind wandered back to happier times they shared before everything changed. Shaking his head, he closed the door and leaned against the wall. Don't think too much, he told himself. Just memories. He trudged back upstairs, feeling more mixed up than ever. The next morning, Tim woke up feeling refreshed. When he glanced at the clock, he was shocked to see it was already past 10, which was unusual for him. He quickly dressed and went into the hallway, wondering if Donna had already left. As he reached the stairs, he caught the pleasant smell of breakfast cooking. As he entered the kitchen, there was Donna in the clothes he had set out for her, cooking bacon and eggs at the stove. "Good morning. I thought I might have to bring you breakfast in bed," she said cheerfully. She turned and took fresh biscuits out of the oven, making Tim feel a bit awkward. "Wow, this is a nice surprise," he teased. "Where did you find food in this house?" She gave him a playful frown. "I didn't. When I woke up, I realized I could have dry cereal or wake you. It sounded like you were fast asleep, so I ran to the store around the corner and got a few things. Hope you don't mind." she said with a hint of apology, wishing he would appreciate her effort. Mind? Not at all. He smiled. I told you to make yourself at home. It's been 2 years since I had a real breakfast here. This is wonderful. Please enjoy yourself. Donna giggled and returned to her cooking. The warm sound filled the kitchen, and Tim realized sadly that he hadn't heard that kind of laughter in a long time. He offered to help, but she insisted on doing everything herself, saying she wanted to repay his kindness. Sitting at the table, they chatted comfortably while she finished. Donna shyly shared stories about her midnight swim and how much fun she had. Tim pretended to be surprised, but his thoughts wandered, making it hard to focus. After they finished breakfast, she went back to her motel for a fresh outfit. While she was gone, Tim thought a lot about the different feelings swirling inside him. He was trying not to think about her like they used to. It felt like ages ago. Remembering those times only made everything more confusing, especially with the serious conversation they were going to have when she returned. Still, it was hard to forget the image of her upset in the car. Another part of him felt hurt and angry, even after all this time. Tim tried not to give in to those feelings, not wanting to repeat the argument they had at the restaurant. He knew that taking it out on her wouldn't make him feel better in the long run. More than anything, he wished he could be the carefree kid he once was instead of the lonely man who spent weekends by himself. He wondered if that happy kid still existed. Donna returned around 3 o'clock. Tim opened the door and felt a sudden urge to avoid the whole conversation. Unlike the night she first arrived or at dinner, Donna had dressed casually in faded jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, with just enough makeup to highlight her natural beauty. It was just as he remembered her, those moments he cherished in his mind. This made what he had to say next even more difficult. Donna, I think we should talk about what happened, he said, trying to sound confident. He watched her closely, but she only nodded. They settled onto the couch next to each other. Where do I begin? She sighed. To answer your question from last night, I need you to know there was never anyone else. Jake was the only one, and it only happened that week. Once we were together, I knew I shouldn't have asked you to take me back. I realized I had let you down, and what we had was over. She struggled to look at him, but took a deep breath and forced herself to meet his gaze. It started during the summer break when you were working and I was at school taking classes and working part-time at the hospital. I ran into Jake after his football practice. We had met a few times before, but we never really talked. He offered to take me to lunch. I thought it was okay, so I said yes. We spent a long time talking about ourselves and how stressed we felt with school. He never acted like he wanted anything more than friendship, and I made sure to say how happy we were together so he wouldn't misunderstand. Donna's pained look was hard for Tim to ignore. We met a few times a week over the summer for lunch so we wouldn't eat alone. It was always in public and I saw him as just a friend. After a while, I started sharing some worries I had about our relationship. Tim's expression showed how frustrated he was, and Donna looked away from his intense gaze. She went on, her voice shaking. I realize now how naive I was. I thought talking to someone would help me sort things out. My friends were away for the summer, and it felt like we could connect over shared experiences. She looked down, fiddling with a loose thread on her jeans. I should have been more careful. Donna lifted her eyes to Tim again. When school started, I was so eager to see you that I paid your roommate to leave for the day so we could have some time alone. That afternoon felt so special, and I thought it would be what we needed. After that, I tried really hard to make everything better. The truth is, I was trying to fix my own worries. Even though he wanted to be patient, Tim found it hard not to interrupt her. Why not just talk to me? He asked. I didn't talk to you because I felt foolish, she said, sounding upset. She noticed his confused expression and quickly continued. I wasn't sure if my worries were real or if I was just being silly. Part of me did not want to admit I was confused. I think I was scared that if we talked, I might find out something I didn't want to face. She looked away and wiped a tear from her cheek. What do you mean, something you didn't want to face? He asked. She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it was that we were growing apart, or that I had doubts about our relationship. I worried that I was seeing problems that weren't really there. This was your first serious relationship. Could we really be happy forever? I just didn't know. If I had spoken to you, maybe things would have been different. Instead, I turned to Jake and... She paused to collect her thoughts. "Tim, I need you to believe me on one thing," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "I honestly never thought things would end up like this. I told myself that our talks were just him being a good friend. There was nothing suggesting he saw me as anything more." Tim felt uncertain about her words because they surprised him. But he remembered what Jake had said about her outside the frat house, and he knew that if Jake acted the way she described, it was definitely not true feelings. The man just wasn't capable of that kind of connection. Donna took a deep breath and continued. "The week everything changed. My friend Cindy and I got a job working at a party the football team was having. It felt like a lucky chance that just came to us. I had lost my job at the hospital, so I really needed the money. We were there every day that week planning and decorating. Jake and I hadn't talked much since school started, but we kept in touch. That week he was there every day, helping us and chatting. I didn't see it coming, but being around him so much made things feel different between us. It was more than just friendship." She looked down, guilt clear on her face. "On Thursday night, he helped us and talked with me for a long time. When it was time to go, he asked me to stay a bit longer to talk about something personal. Cindy seemed worried and tried to convince me to leave, but he insisted I stay. I kept telling myself that nothing had changed, so there was no reason to go. I wish I could explain why I stayed, but truthfully, I just don't know. Whether I let him trick me, tricked myself, or felt a bit flattered that he was interested, I've pondered this for 5 years and still have no good answers." She paused, noticing the troubled look on Tim's face, but felt he needed to hear the rest. "Go on," he said quietly. "Let's just finish this." She took a deep breath. "He offered me some drinks and shared his problems with me. Somehow I ended up in his room. He charmed me. I take full responsibility. It was my choice to be there. He seemed to know how to say just the right things to keep me confused. Now I realize he was just using me the whole time. I left that place knowing I had ruined what we had, knowing you could never forgive me. It was a mess in my mind because I didn't even understand why I chose to do it. I had been talking to him because of my feelings for you, and then I turned around and betrayed you. It was terrible." She looked down, unable to hold Tim's pained gaze. "I skipped class and stayed home on Friday, trying to figure out what happened and how to tell you. All I could do was sit in bed, hating myself. On Saturday, I promised I would tell you no matter what. I didn't want there to be any chance you would hear it from someone else. I got your message saying you would be out studying, so I went to the library but couldn't find you. I went back to your room, but neither you nor your roommate was there. In the end, I went to my room and left you a message. Then I just waited to see if you would call back. That's when Jake showed up and wouldn't leave without me. He insisted I needed to be at the event because of all the work I had done on the house. I didn't want to go, but he wouldn't take no for an answer and made a fuss. I was scared someone would find out what I had done, so I gave in." Donna's face shifted from sadness to frustration. "When I got there, he showed me off, praising my work. Everyone was being nice and making me feel special. He made sure I always had a drink. After some time, he kept pushing me to join him in a private space. He didn't stop until he got his way once more." She took a moment, forcing herself to meet his gaze again. "Tim, I'm truly sorry. I knew I had already destroyed everything, and I promise I never wanted that. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could manage things. I was so naive. As soon as I could, I went to the restroom to be by myself. I thought about how I had messed everything up and decided to go to your room and wait for you." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she continued. "I walked out of the bathroom to grab my things and saw him at the door talking to someone. When he stepped back and I saw you, I knew there was nothing I could do to change what had happened or how hurt you must have felt. I panicked and ran back into the bathroom. I wouldn't come out for hours because I just couldn't face anyone. The next day I tried to call you, even though I didn't know what to say. Unfortunately, you were already gone. I did everything I could. I talked to your roommate, tried your cell phone, and finally called your parents' house. That was a big mistake." Her expression changed to a sad smile as she wiped away the tears streaming down her cheeks. "Your mom told me exactly what a terrible person I had been. She said if I had any respect, I would leave you alone." Donna's face fell again. She continued, I knew she was right, so I stopped trying to contact you." Tim leaned back, making an effort to stay calm, even though he was feeling quite the opposite. "I don't know what to say. I knew your mom must have had strong words for you, but she didn't tell me what she said. She's very protective of her only son." He took a deep breath, trying to gather himself. "So, you really cared for him?" Her expression was hard to read. "No. I was confused about my feelings, but I never really cared for him. I can't explain how much I wish I could go back and change my choices. There's nothing I can say to make up for what I did. I was a foolish girl who thought I could manage everything." She touched his hand. "It's easy to see why everyone was upset." "Upset?" Donna looked like she might cry again. "Most of my close friends were very disappointed with me. Cindy was so angry that she could hardly speak to me nicely." As her emotions grew stronger, Tim suggested she go to the bathroom and brought her a drink to help her calm down. When she returned, she looked even more upset than before. She accepted the drink with trembling hands and took a quick sip. "Tim, this next part is very hard for me. I haven't shared it since college, except with one person who's been helping me face the consequences. I will tell you because I owe you the full truth, but please let me finish the whole story." Her serious tone made Tim uneasy. He thought the hardest part was already over. After he promised to listen, Donna took a deep breath and prepared herself for something difficult. "After you left, I stayed hidden for weeks, but Jake wouldn't stop trying to reach me. Some younger girls in my house were dating other players and kept encouraging him to contact me. I felt so lonely and down on myself that I finally gave in and started seeing him. That's when Cindy and some of the others stopped talking to me completely." She paused, took another sip, and her hands were visibly shaking. "I quickly learned he wasn't like you at all. He was charming at first, trying to win me over, but that changed fast. His mood was hard to predict, and sometimes it was frightening. He would get upset if I didn't do what he wanted or if I chose to stay in and study instead of going out with him and his friends. He wanted closeness almost every time we were together, and it didn't matter if I was comfortable with it or not. I began to feel really bad about myself because I was letting him treat me this way. No one had ever been like that with me, but I kept allowing it. I think I was too scared to admit I had been wrong about him because I didn't want to face the truth. Instead of standing up for myself, I just hoped things would improve. After 4 months of living like that, he finally took things too far. We had a big argument, and I finally found the courage to stand up to him and walk away." She took another sip, and Tim thought she looked like she might break down. He gently took her hand and started to stroke it. When he asked if she wanted to continue, she nodded. "When I got back to the dorm, I ran into Cindy. She noticed right away how upset I was and immediately walked me back to my room, insisting I tell her everything. I was so relieved that she didn't blame me for being foolish in the first place. I stayed in my room for a week, ignoring Jake's calls and refusing to see him when he came around. When I returned to class the following week, I found out he was really upset with me for leaving him. He spread lies about me and what happened between us all over campus. It was truly hard to bear." She put down her glass and stood. "I'm sorry, Tim, I need a moment," she said. "Of course," he replied. "Take as long as you need." The truth was, he needed a moment too. She went upstairs to the bathroom and Tim poured himself another glass. Everything he had thought about her life continuing as usual was completely wrong. Although he tried to keep his feelings under control, he couldn't help but feel angry about what she had gone through. If what she said was true, Jake had controlled her and ruined both of their lives while seeming unaffected. Tim couldn't understand how someone could be so cruel and not face any consequences. Still, the story she told was hard to fully believe. Even though he wanted to trust her, a part of him felt there needed to be some proof first. Even with proof, it wouldn't change the fact that she didn't intend to hurt him or break his heart. That didn't exactly help him feel ready to forgive her and move on. Donna looked a little better when she returned. Tim noticed that she seemed overwhelmed and wondered what was on her mind, but he decided to wait and hear more of her story before figuring out if it was important. He stood up and gave her a quick hug. "Are you okay?" he asked, genuinely worried. She smiled, looking a bit lighter. "Yes, thank you." She sat down next to him again. "What was I saying?" "You were telling me about your time after you left Jake," he said gently, trying to gauge how much she wanted to share. "Right," she replied, and her smile faded. No one had ever questioned my reputation before. Now everyone thought, well, they didn't think very highly of me. I stopped going out and dropped all my activities. It was a good thing since I was behind in my classes because he took up too much of my time, but catching up felt impossible. I failed 2 classes and lost my scholarship, so I had to drop out, she continued. She finished her drink and offered him a sad smile. I couldn't have turned my life upside down more if I tried. I went from being happy and doing well to feeling alone and lost in just 1 semester. She shifted a little away from him. And in the middle of all that, I hurt you badly. She indicated she wanted a refill, then prepared herself for what was next. My parents were heartbroken. They couldn't believe I had failed, especially my dad. I didn't have the heart to explain it to him. He still doesn't know? Tim asked. He passed away just over 2 years ago, she said, her voice trembling as tears threatened to come again. Oh, Donna, I'm so sorry, Tim said, feeling emotional for her. He remembered how kind her father had been to him. He reached out and held her shoulder, wanting to comfort both her and himself. They shared a moment of embrace, then Donna pulled back and looked into his eyes. He really liked you, you know, she said with a brief smile, remembering happier times. Then I spent the last 2 years of his life not telling him the full truth about what happened. She pulled back again, and they sat in an uneasy silence. Okay, your turn, she said suddenly. Tim looked puzzled. You must have questions about all of this. I'd rather we talk now than keep wondering if there's anything left unsaid. Her expression showed she was determined to continue and didn't want pity right now. He took a deep breath, trying to find a kind way to ask some of the many questions swirling in his mind. Donna seemed very emotionally tired, and he wanted to be careful not to upset her. He was surprised at how much that thought was starting to bother him. So, were you planning to break up with me to be with him? She looked down. I never thought about breaking up with you until I was with him. After it happened, I realized I crossed a line I couldn't return from. I don't know how I could have faced you again. I didn't even think about dating him until after you were gone. I've talked to someone about all of this to try to understand, but honestly, there are no good reasons for why I acted so thoughtlessly. It all sounds like excuses. You're seeing someone, right? He asked awkwardly. Donna laughed softly. I don't think we should discuss that. I've had some personal issues since everything happened. That's not your burden, and I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Let's just say I've been talking to someone who helps me face my mistakes and their consequences. So why now? Tim asked. After all this time, why did you choose now to come see me? It was her idea, Donna replied earnestly. I always wanted to tell you what really happened. I'm sure you imagined the worst about what I did. Even though I deserve any bad feelings you have about me, I thought it might help you move on if you knew the entire truth. After a while, I stopped trying, but then she suggested that I reach out to you. Enough time has passed that maybe you wouldn't hate me enough to not want to hear what I had to say. I'm not sure hate is the right word, Tim said softly. I was really angry at you and hurt. Maybe I tried to hate you to get through what happened. He saw her wince and took her hand, but I never could bring myself to do it. So many of my best memories are tied to you, it feels like hating a part of myself. She looked at him with gratitude. Tim, I know I can't say it enough, but I am truly sorry for what I did. She paused, trying to steady herself. I could never forgive myself for my actions. Believe me, I wouldn't ask that of you. Tim studied her, trying to process her clear regret without letting it cloud his view. I don't know what to say, it's a lot to take in. About that last night with Jake. He paused, trying to choose his words carefully. Is that something you want to discuss? She thought quietly for several moments. I really don't, Tim. I thought I could, but now that I am here, I know it's not possible. Trust me when I say we ended things and it was really difficult. It showed me who he really was, and it helped me realize that I needed to grow up. She stopped and looked at him, trying to find the right words. It made me see that the struggles I faced were in my head, and not something anyone, especially you, she said firmly, did to me. Tim felt she was truly sorry. It made him feel lighter, but he was still uncertain about where things stood. He decided she had enough to think about for one day. Let's think about this later, Tim suggested. He saw her smile at the idea of talking more in the future. Do you want to just relax here for a bit? We don't have to talk about the past anymore. No, I'm a bit tired. I should leave before I have too much to drink and can't drive home. I want you to know that I truly meant what I said. I came here so you could have answers to your questions. If there's anything else you want to know, I'll try my best to be open about it. I'll be away for a few days, she said softly. Cindy lives a few hours away and I promised to visit. I'll be back on Wednesday if you want to talk again. I would really like that no matter what we discuss. This means a lot to me, Tim. Thank you. After a final hug, Donna left. Watching her go, Tim felt even more confused about what to do next. All he knew for sure was that it was time to see an old friend. As it was getting dark, he pulled off the highway at a truck stop. He filled the car with gas, then parked and went inside. When the waitress seated him, he ordered a glass of water and 2 menus, then waited as patiently as he could. About 10 minutes later, a young woman walked in. She was about 5'7", slim, and had a friendly way about her. "Tim," she said, walking quickly to the table. She gave him a warm hug and stepped back, looking him over. "You look great." "Hi, Cindy," he replied with a big smile. "You look even better than I remember." She smiled back and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. They sat next to each other in the booth and spent several minutes chatting about simple things before moving on to the harder topics. "So she finally came to see you?" He nodded seriously. "Yes, it was really intense. At first I was quite upset, but then I realized I needed to understand what happened." After she explained, he looked down, searching for the right words. "I didn't know how to feel. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Are you okay with that?" "Tim, I would have spoken with you any time you needed. I always thought you were a great person, and I felt that Donna was very fortunate." He couldn't hide his happiness at her kind words. Cindy was always nice, but during college he never understood how Donna's friends really saw him. We had a big argument about what happened. Usually she could read people well, but he made her doubt herself. It ended so badly that... "What did she tell you?" "I'd like to hear what you know first. She said she explained everything, including how it ended. I just need to find a way to confirm some of what she said. I want to trust her completely, but I had been angry with her for so long that it's hard to just let it go. Honestly, I really want to move past this. She seems truly sorry, and I hope I can believe her. Sometimes I feel unsure about what is real with her." Cindy looked at him with understanding. "Well, she never asked me not to tell you, so I guess it's okay." They talked for the next hour, with Cindy confirming everything that Donna had shared. She also added a few details about Donna's shaky emotional state that complicated things further. He was surprised Donna hadn't told him things that might have helped him see her side better. It was confusing, but he appreciated that she hadn't tried to gain his sympathy. When they got to the topic of Donna's breakup with Jake, Tim interrupted. "Listen, I have to be honest. She didn't explain what happened, just that they had a fight. I don't want to put you in a tough spot, but I feel it's something I should know. I can't explain it, but even though I believe her, I still feel like she isn't telling me everything." "She isn't," Cindy said with sharpness. "And for good reasons. I'll tell you, but please don't tell her I did. I think she should share it with you, but I doubt she can, and it might be better if you don't ask." Tim leaned in, trying to hide his eagerness, though his curiosity was obvious. Jake kept pressuring her to do things she wasn't comfortable with. She wasn't like that before, but he wanted her to dress a certain way at parties and drink more than she wanted. He showed her off to his friends like she was a trophy. One night he got her to drink too much and took her to his room. While they were there, one of his friends came in without her knowing. He undressed and tried to join them without saying anything to her. She panicked, and Jake tried to hold her down. Finally, she kicked back and hit the guy behind her. Then she warned Jake that if he didn't let her go, she'd fight back hard. Cindy's face showed anger. That finally frightened him enough to let her go. She grabbed her clothes and ran out of the house without getting dressed. Almost everyone noticed her. Later, Jake told everyone that she had invited 2 people to join her and asked for more volunteers next time. When she chose not to see him again, he started spreading rumors that she had been with several players. Now, whenever she tried to go out later, people assumed she was easy because they had heard it through the gossip. Some guys even said mean things to her in class. She couldn't handle the embarrassment, and her grades suffered. Eventually, she lost her scholarship and had to leave school, all because of him. Tim regretted asking about her and felt sorry for being so curious. He was shocked to find his hands clenched tightly. Suddenly, what Jake had done to him seemed less important compared to what Donna had endured. They sat quietly for several minutes. Finally, Cindy said she needed to go because her fiancé was waiting for her. After a quick hug and a promise to attend her wedding, Tim walked Cindy to her car. He then got back in his own vehicle and began the long drive home. It felt nice to be on the empty road at night. There was a lot on his mind. "Do you want to come over and talk?" Pete asked. "No, I need to figure this out on my own. I just wanted to update you on where things stand. You have every right to feel how you do about her, but you should know her side of the story was pretty intense. I'm not sure what I should feel, but things are complicated." Pete sounded irritated. What could she have said that would make her actions okay? That's the thing. She didn't try to justify her actions. She shared everything that happened and her reasons. Even though I know she hurt me, I can understand better now that I know the full story. I also heard about what happened to her after I left, and it wasn't easy. I heard him let out a deep sigh. "Don't tell me you feel sorry for her. That's a sure way to get hurt again." "No, that's not what I mean. She's faced a lot because of the choices she's made, and I sympathize with her. I'm not saying I forget what she did. Like I said, it's complicated." "So, are you going to tell me about it?" he asked. "I'm sorry, but it's very personal. I wouldn't feel right sharing it. Trust me. She had her own struggles. It's more than I would have ever put her through." "But you're not saying anything romantic is happening, right?" he asked, sounding concerned. "No, nothing like that," Tim said, feeling sure that despite old feelings surfacing, he had things managed. "She came to share her side, not to ask for my forgiveness. I think she felt so guilty about her past choices that she was having a hard time coping." "Yeah, I can see how that could happen," he admitted slowly. "I just want you to be careful. I know how she was really on your mind before. You don't want to go through that again." "Definitely not," Tim said, feeling more sure of himself. "It's a little tricky having her around because of our past, but she's changed a lot. Trust me, I'm not caught up in old feelings." Tim said goodbye and went for a swim. As he walked into the water, he couldn't stop thinking about how lovely Donna looked during that moment he witnessed. He dove in to shake the thought from his mind. While Donna was away, Tim didn't hear from her. He thought about calling her, but quickly pushed the idea aside. He believed the best thing to do was to focus on work where he felt more in control. On Wednesday, after work, Tim noticed the message light on his answering machine was blinking. He tried to act calm, but he felt a rush of energy as he rushed to check it. "Tim, it's Donna. I wanted to let you know I'm back. I'm running some errands, but feel free to call me anytime." He quickly reached for the phone, but then paused to take a deep breath. "Calm down. You're acting like a kid," he reminded himself. Ignoring the urge to call her right back, he headed to the kitchen to make a snack. After taking a moment to collect himself, Tim picked up the phone and dialed her number. "Hi, Tim," her voice greeted him warmly. "Hey, Donna, did you have a good trip?" he asked, trying to sound relaxed. "Yes, I did. Cindy looked great, and I met her fiancé. They seem really happy together," she said with a hint of nostalgia. Tim paused, realizing he wasn't prepared for this conversation. After a silence that felt long, he said the only thing that came to mind. "Well, I'm going to Pete and Trisha's for dinner. Would you like to join?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "Could we do something tomorrow instead?" "Sure, that sounds good," Tim replied, feeling a bit awkward for stumbling over his words. "Have a nice evening and tell them I said hello." Tim ended the call and stared at the phone, unsure if he felt let down or if she had done him a favor. Mixing Donna and his feelings with Pete and Trisha at their place? He shook his head and started up the stairs, determined to sort things out. The next day went better. Tim was busy at work and managed to keep his thoughts off Donna for the most part. He called her, and they made plans for dinner and a walk. There was a restaurant nearby next to a small stream. Couples liked to stroll along the path, and there were many quiet spots to sit and chat. He thought it would be a nice place to go that felt easygoing. Tim was pleasantly surprised when he picked her up. She was wearing a simple evening dress that looked beautiful without being over the top. She was clearly just as eager to avoid looking romantic as he was. He wondered if she felt unsure about where things were heading, just like he did. Dinner was delicious, but the conversation was even more engaging. They didn't mention college or the chaos that followed. Tim noticed there were no awkward moments like before. He was surprised to learn that she had started painting. She even offered to share pictures of her work, some of which were shown in a local gallery. He felt sad hearing about her father's passing. He had been a kind man who welcomed Tim into the family, just like his own parents welcomed Donna. Tim let her talk until she seemed ready to move on. It was clear she still felt the pain of her loss. They walked by the stream for a while, enjoying the silence together. Finally, he felt it was time to ask something that had been on his mind. "Donna, why didn't you want to go with me last night?" She looked away but answered quickly. "I just wasn't ready to see Pete and Tricia again. I feel bad about it, but it was too hard to face them so soon after Saturday." Tim felt frustrated that he hadn't realized this sooner. She came knowing that anyone she saw might remember her as the one who hurt him. "I'm sorry, I should have thought about how uncomfortable that might be for you. I've spoken to them and they wouldn't have..." "What? They wouldn't have been unkind? I know they are good people, but I would still know what they thought." She walked closer to the creek, tossing a piece of grass in the water and watching it drift away. "It's important for me to see them before I leave." Noticing his puzzled look, she added, "I owe an apology to more than just you." Tim didn't quite grasp what she meant, but after his earlier mistake, he decided not to press further. There was still so much about her that he didn't understand, but it had been a lovely evening, and he wanted to focus on enjoying it. He was surprised by how much she had changed, and how differently they interacted now compared to in college. Tim realized, with a hint of sadness, that the girl he had once loved in college was gone. He was taken aback by how much that thought affected him, despite believing he had moved on. But perhaps, he thought, this new friendship would help him separate old feelings from now. They went out again the next night, and the night after that. On Sunday afternoon, they spent the day at Tim's house, enjoying the pool and watching a movie together. Donna cooked dinner for him, and he was impressed by her talents. At the end of the night, she suddenly kissed him on the cheek. As Tim watched her walk to her car, he touched his face, feeling comforted by the gesture. The feelings he once had were gone, but seeing the lovely woman getting into her car still affected him. He didn't know exactly how to feel, but remembering her kiss made him smile without thinking. For the first time since her return, he didn't question her actions or how he should react. "Pete will see you soon," Rhonda told Tim. She looked at him strangely, then smiled. "What's going on with you today?" He shrugged, feeling puzzled. "Nothing. Why?" She looked at him for a moment as if about to say something, but then thought better of it and went back to her tasks. Tim's day had been strange. His co-workers kept making vague comments and giving him smiles that made him think they were sharing a secret joke. Usually he would be annoyed by this, but for some reason, it didn't bother him today. Pete opened his door and waved him in. "Did you finish the new analysis you were working on?" he asked as Tim handed him a folder and sat down. "Yeah, here it is. I think we can make the changes without needing any major updates. We should let the team review the details, but I'm confident it will work out." "Well, I stopped expecting you to be wrong long ago," he said with a smile. "Now on to something more serious. I've been getting complaints about you all day." "What?" Tim said, surprised. He tried to think of anything unusual he had done, but couldn't come up with anything. "What did I do?" Pete looked at him seriously. "It seems you're annoying everyone with this happy new attitude you have." After letting Tim squirm for a moment, he broke into a big grin. "People can only handle so much cheerful energy. It's bothering everyone else." "What are you talking about?" Tim asked. "What happened this weekend? I haven't seen you like this in a long time," he said, enjoying Tim's discomfort. "Nothing happened. I'm not acting any differently from usual. No one has really said anything. You're just joking around with me." Pete shook his head and leaned back in his chair. "At least 10 people have asked me what's up with you today. You don't even realize you're doing it, do you?" He became serious for a moment. "Whatever it is, I'm happy for you." As Tim left the office, he noticed Rhonda laughing softly. He felt embarrassed, realizing she was the 10th person. On Tuesday, Donna visited again. and they talked about dinner with Pete, and Trish planned for Wednesday night. She offered to go with Tim this time, but he thought it would be better for everyone to go out together that weekend. After what happened before, he wanted to make sure she felt comfortable. As she agreed, Tim was surprised by how protective he felt toward her, even though they had not gotten along just 2 weeks earlier. He realized that letting go of the anger and distrust was getting easier. It felt good to take control of his life again. On Saturday night, Tim planned to pick her up for dinner. But at 5 o'clock, Donna called to ask if he could meet her there instead. He was about to ask why when she mentioned that he should arrive a little late. "Why do you want me to be late?" he asked. "I want to talk to Pete and Trisha alone first. It's something I need to do before we sit down together," she replied firmly. "Donna, that's not necessary. You don't owe them anything. I told them everything is all right between us." Tim paused, hearing the determination in her voice. "I should at least be there with you." "Tim," she sighed, "your friends welcomed me into their lives when we were together. I liked them a lot, and they treated me like family. It's important for me to clear things up with them. I need to do this." Tim didn't understand her reasoning, but decided it wasn't worth arguing. He arrived at the time she asked and went to the bar while looking for them. All three were in a booth at the far side of the restaurant, with Donna doing most of the talking. Oddly, Pete seemed to look at her kindly, and Tim thought he saw tears in Trisha's eyes. He wondered what she could be saying to cause such reactions. Seeing that the conversation was still happening, he ordered a beer while he waited. When he turned back to their table, he saw Trisha and Donna hugging. Tim watched, intrigued, as they finished, and Donna headed towards the ladies' room. Thinking it was a good time to say hello, he grabbed his drink and approached their table. Trisha noticed him first and stood up, giving him a hug. "What was that all about?" he asked. "It seemed pretty serious over here." They exchanged uneasy glances, and then Pete spoke up. "We were just catching up. You should ask Donna about it later." Tim nodded slightly, accepting this. He picked up the menu, and just as he put it down, Donna returned to the table. Tim welcomed her with a warm hug, holding it for a few seconds and gently rocking her. He knew the talk they had must have been difficult for her. He felt her grip him a little tighter as she softly said, "Thank you." Tim was amazed at how they seemed to understand each other without words over the past few days. The rest of the evening was filled with laughter as they reminisced about funny moments from the past year, often at Tim's expense. At least Pete took the time to mention how much Tim had improved at work and how well respected he had become. Tim noticed Donna smiling frequently, clearly impressed by Pete's kind words. She encouraged him with gentle squeezes of his arm. The dinner went smoothly, and afterwards they went dancing, where Tim finally got to show off what he had learned. "Wow," she exclaimed as she came off the dance floor after several songs. "You've become so much better." Tim felt proud as he explained the lessons he had been taking. He chose not to tell her that it had been Trisha's idea after she saw him struggle during a previous night out. The next day, she brought him a card to a local dance school, having already paid for a month of lessons. Though a bit embarrassed, he appreciated her thoughtfulness and attended the lessons with little complaint. He found them enjoyable and continued, even though he had little chance to practice outside of moments with Trisha. When the band played one of his favorite songs, Tim tried to persuade Donna to dance again, but she said she needed a break. She turned to Trisha and asked her to join him instead. Trisha happily agreed and accompanied him to the dance floor, where they became the focus of attention. Trisha was a lovely woman and a fantastic dancer, and they quickly drew cheers from the crowd. Once the song ended, the applause for them seemed as loud as that for the band. As a slow song began, she drew him in close. Tim leaned his cheek against hers as they swayed to the music. He glanced over at Donna and saw her chatting with Pete, her gaze still on him. She wore a big smile, and he couldn't help but smile back. Trisha noticed his gaze and then returned her attention to him. "You know she really likes you, right?" she whispered. For a moment, he lost his rhythm on the dance floor as the words registered. Trisha nudged him gently, helping him find his step again, even as he tried to seem casual while looking into her eyes. "That's not true. We hardly know each other anymore," he replied, unsure if he sounded as convincing as he hoped. She shook her head slowly, a playful smile on her face. You can't be that unaware. Tim glanced over at Donna, who had turned her attention to Pete. He couldn't help but notice how nice her dress looked on her. Her long black hair fell gracefully over her shoulders, contrasting nicely with her fair skin. She was laughing at something they shared, her joy capturing his attention. He remembered her from college but felt a deeper appreciation for her beauty now. It took him back to a night by the pool. The way the shadows touched her, the elegance in her movements, how she walked with a graceful strength. Trisha leaned back toward him. Is that for her? Or should I talk to my husband? Tim suddenly realized he felt very uncomfortable, caught off guard. Trisha, I'm really sorry, he stammered. Don't worry about it, she said with a light laugh. It'll be our little secret. She glanced down for an instant and added playfully, well, maybe not so little. Tim felt his face turn bright red, wishing he could disappear. Just think about my husband sitting over there and what he would do if he knew. That should help you focus. Tim chuckled at the thought and managed to regain his composure. As the song ended, they stepped off the dance floor. He caught curious looks from both Pete and Donna. Before he could say something awkward, Trisha stepped in to help. She shrugged. All I said was that if he kept dancing like that, I might have to ask Pete to take me home. She winked at her husband before turning back to Tim. He felt grateful and quickly tried to change the topic. Throughout the night, Tim couldn't shake what Trisha had hinted at. Sure, part of him was thrilled to be around Donna again. She was lovely, and he held many cherished memories with her. However, after their tough breakup, he hardly knew this new version of her. She had changed so much. How could he be sure of anything? After an hour, they decided it was time to go home. Trisha hugged Tim and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, leaving him feeling awkward. She smiled knowingly before turning to Donna. The two shared a warm embrace and whispered together while Tim and Pete said their goodbyes. They got into their car and drove away, leaving the young couple to share their own good nights. Tim walked Donna to her car, where she wrapped him in a long hug and then gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. I had a wonderful time tonight, she said softly. Thank you. Her eyes met his. You are such a great man. She rested her head on his chest. Trisha's words echoed in his mind, making him uncertain of how to respond. He had been avoiding the truth for a week, and now he wondered if everyone could see right through him. Finally, he knew he had to take a chance. Would you like to go out for a drink? He asked carefully. She paused for a moment before replying, I'm a little tired. Can we do something tomorrow instead? She looked hopeful. Tim was unsure why she wanted to end the evening now, but he thought that a little extra time to think could be helpful for him too. Sure, I can call you afternoon and we can plan something then. A worried look crossed her face. I have something to do early. Can I call you when I get back? It should be before 4 o'clock. Something in her expression felt off, but the night had been so nice that he didn't want to press the issue. Just call me when you're done. I don't have any plans for the day. If I'm not at home, I'll have my phone with me. They shared another quick hug, and then Tim watched her get into her car and drive away. He sighed, knowing he had a long night of thinking ahead. Even if Trisha was right, did it really change anything? As much as he tried to keep his past memories separate from his feelings for Donna, was he beginning to care about her? Or was it just old feelings resurfacing? Was it worth the risk with someone who could hurt him? As he got into his car, he remembered watching Donna on the dance floor and felt sure that it was worth it. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.